What's up and welcome to 17 Non. Today we're going to be making okonomiyaki. There are various ways to make okonomiyaki, but for this recipe we're going to be making the Osaka way, which I find is slightly easier. The word okonomiyaki literally translates to whatever you want, and it's that variation that gives this recipe so many possibilities. Okonomiyaki gets me super hyped when talking about it. It's super simple, packed full of umami, and incredibly easy to make at home. And before we start this recipe, if you like this video, you can help support the channel by clicking on the like and subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. With all that said, let's make some okonomiyaki. Before we start this recipe, we need to make dashi. Clean a small piece of kombu using a damp cloth. When the kombu is nice and clean, add to a small saucepan along with 200 ml of cold water. Then allow the kombu to sit in the water for around 15 minutes. You can do this the night before, but 15 minutes is fine for this recipe. Next, add the saucepan to a medium to high heat. We want to bring the temperature of the water up to around 80 degrees centigrade. Usually anything above 80 degrees can create a bitter dashi stock. When at temperature, remove the kombu, then turn off the heat. At this point the kombu's done its thing and it's now time to incorporate the bonito. Add 5 grams of bonito flakes and allow the dashi to steep for around 15 minutes. As I said earlier, this is a fairly quick dashi, but this will do just fine for okonomiyaki. After steeping, we now want to pass the dashi for a fine sieve. Then when passed, we can store the dashi to one side for now. Now we have our dashi, we can move on to making the filling for the okonomiyaki. Let's move on to preparing a few vegetables for this filling. As this is okonomiyaki, let's start by preparing some cabbage. For this we're going to slice half a white cabbage as fine as possible. I usually slice the cabbage as fine as possible for okonomiyaki, however feel free to slice cabbage however you like. When sliced, add the cabbage to a large mixing bowl and place to one side for now. Moving on to the rest of the filling. Slice a bunch of spring onions as fine as possible. Now for a bit of umami. Grate approximately 200 grams of cheddar cheese. Now we want to add the green onions and cheese to the sliced cabbage. For a little bit of texture, we're going to be adding 20 grams of tenkasu. If you can't get hold of tenkasu, you can simply make it by frying tempura batter. Finally, season with sea salt and black pepper. Place the filling to one side and we'll come back to this shortly. Now to make the batter for the okonomiyaki. In a mixing bowl, add plain flour, cornstarch and baking powder. Mix well until all the flour is evenly combined. To the flour, we now want to add 1 whole egg and 200 ml of that good dashi stock we made earlier. Start to mix until a smooth batter is formed. Take care not to mix too much, as this will activate the gluten within the flour. This will leave us with a cake-like batter that's never good for okonomiyaki. When ready, add the batter to the filling and mix well. We're looking for almost like a coleslaw-like consistency here. As said earlier, this is just a good base for okonomiyaki. Feel free to add various other vegetables or proteins if you want. I like to add a pinch of togarashi to give the filling a little bit more of a bite. What I also like about this filling is that the grated cheddar will create a nice golden brown colour when we come to cook the okonomiyaki. When ready, cover the filling, then store in the refrigerator for now to rest. Now let's talk pancetta. You can use sliced pork belly or bacon, this one's up to you. To make things interesting, we're going to weave this pancetta. To weave, add 5 slices of pancetta onto a piece of baking paper. Next, gather the 2 inner pieces of pancetta, then place another piece over the top going horizontally. Fold the other 2 pieces back over the top again, then repeat this process for the other 3 slices. Sorry for the blurry footage, and I'm probably making this sound way more difficult than it actually is. And I'm sure you'll realize how easy it is when you start to weave. Not only does it look cool, but this step actually has some functionality. This will help when we come to flip the okonomiyaki over during the cooking process. When weaved, set the pancetta to one side. Next, to make the simplest of sauces. In a small mixing bowl, we're going to want to add Worcestershire sauce, light soy, sugar or honey, ketchup, and a little bit of oyster sauce. Mix well, and this sauce is called okonomi sauce. This sauce is commonly used when making okonomiyaki, and we will baste this over the okonomiyaki during the cooking process. Just before we cook, we're going to need to gather some Japanese mayo, katsuobushi, aonori, and some sliced spring onions. All that's left to do now is to cook. Place a medium-sized pan onto a high heat, then add a decent amount of cooking oil. When hot, add a generous amount of the okonomiyaki filling into the center of the pan. You can make the okonomiyaki as big as you like, but for reference, I made mine about 1 inch deep. Next, carefully lay the pancetta over the filling. Remove the baking paper, then cover with a lid, and we're going to want to cook for around 5 to 6 minutes. After a few minutes, it's time to flip the okonomiyaki. Before flipping, check to see if the base is nice and golden brown. When ready, use a large spatula and flip the okonomiyaki over onto the other side. At this point, I like to use a spatula to tidy around the edges. Now add some of the okonomi sauce we made earlier, then use a brush to baste all over the okonomiyaki. When basted, we want to cook the okonomiyaki for a further 3 to 4 minutes. Then when ready, remove from the heat, and all we need to do now is to finish the okonomiyaki. Now to make this thing look a bit more attractive. Place the okonomiyaki onto a serving plate, then give it one more brush of the okonomi sauce. Next, add a good amount of aonori over the top. This is a fine bright green nori powder. Next, add a ridiculous amount of good Japanese mayo. And the more mayo the better. This next step is pretty pointless, but it looks kinda cool. Just use a bamboo stick to create this pattern. Add a touch more of aonori and some sliced green onion. Finally, all that's left to do is hit it with some katsuobushi. I said earlier, the cool thing about okonomiyaki is that it's so flexible in terms of what you add to the filling. I think by adding seafood or various other vegetables to the filling, then that would also work really well. Regardless how you go about it, have fun making okonomiyaki. And let me know in the comments if you get the chance to make this recipe. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe on making okonomiyaki. If you want to see more content like this in the future, then click on the like, subscribe, share button, and all that other good stuff. With all that said, I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, and as always, peace.